a giant tree, rising from the heart of the valley like it owned the whole place. An enormous tree, skyscraper enormous. The trunk alone was wider than any building I'd ever walked past back home. Dark bark swirled with faint golden veins that caught the soft, everywhere light and made it glow warm from the inside. Branches spread out in slow, patient layers, heavy with silver-green leaves that shimmered as if they'd been dipped in dew that never dried. The canopy stretched so wide it seemed to hold up half the sky in this hidden cavern, shading acres of grass and flowers below without ever feeling heavy or dark. Just still, ancient, calm. I stared, breath caught somewhere between my chest and my throat. This was only my second day here. Yesterday, I woke up on moss thinking the world had glitched. Today, I was looking at a tree the size of a city block, growing inside a mountain, like it was the most natural thing. My brain kept trying to resize it, make it smaller, more reasonable, and failing beautifully. I let my gaze slide down the trunk, following the long shadow it cast across the grasses, and that's when I noticed the second thing. Tucked right against the rock wall below me, exactly where the tunnel I'd come through opened onto the valley floor, stood a small, square structure. Red and white striped awning, half-open curtain, bench seat visible inside. It looked exactly like one of those old photo booths from a mall or a fair. In a dungeon, a quiet, surprised laugh escaped me. Okay, that's a plot twist. The tree was awe on a scale that made me feel small in the best way. The photo booth was awe of the ridiculous, everyday kind. Together, they gave me a direction. I turned my attention to the rest of the valley now, really taking it in. It stretched out below like someone had painted a secret garden and forgotten to add the edges. Tall grasses swayed in a breeze I still couldn't feel up here, dotted with wildflowers in every shade of blue and violet. A narrow stream wound through the middle, sparkling over smooth pebbles. Smaller trees curved gently along the banks, their silver-green leaves catching the light in soft flashes. Iridescent birds flitted between branches, their calls low and melodic, never sharp. In the middle of it all, well, off to one side now that the giant tree dominated the center, sat a small stone platform with a low bench, moss-covered and inviting. Faint glowing runes marked the boundary around the valley, pulsing once as I'd stepped fully onto the ledge earlier. Pale gold letters had appeared then, calm and clear. You have entered Floor 1 Safe Zone. Level 2. Monsters are harmless here. No disturbances allowed. The words had faded, leaving only that simple relief. I could breathe here. I leaned forward a little, scanning for a way down. The drop was too steep to slide, but a few steps along the ledge brought me to it. A wooden signpost driven into the stone right at the edge. Simple, weathered grey, like a trail marker. A single arrow pointed straight down, and in neat carved letters it read, information. No extra words, just that. I followed the arrow with my eyes. Curving gently downward from directly beneath the sign was a staircase carved right into the mountainside. Smooth stone steps, wide and even, edges softened by moss. Tiny glowing flecks winked along a low railing like built-in lanterns. The stairs followed the natural sweep of the rock face, descending steadily toward the valley floor, and straight toward that little striped structure waiting at the bottom. I rested one hand on the warm stone beside the first step. This was still underground, still a dungeon, but the air smelled like rain-wet grass and blooming flowers. The light felt like late afternoon sun even without a sky. And now there were carved stairs and a signpost pointing me to information like I'd wandered into the world's gentlest theme park. I took the first step down. The stone felt solid and kind under my boot. I kept going, one step after another, the enormous tree growing larger ahead, filling more of my view with every descent, the valley opening wider around me, until finally the stairs smoothed out onto soft grass. I stood in front of it. The structure was even more ordinary up close. Faded red and white stripes on the awning, a small wooden sign above the curtained doorway that read, in the same careful hand-carved letters, "Information Booth." I stood there in front of the information booth for a long moment, the enormous tree looming behind me like a quiet guardian, the valley's gentle sounds wrapping around the odd little structure. Up close, it was even more out of place. Faded red and white stripes on the awning, a simple wooden sign above the curtain that read "Information Booth" in those same neat carved letters. No glowing runes, no magical hum, just normal. Too normal for a place where trees grew skyscraper tall and dungeons had meadows. I reached out and brushed my fingers along the edge of the curtain. Soft fabric, slightly dusty. "Information," I murmured. About what exactly? No answer came from the valley or the tree. Just the stream and the birds, patient. Curiosity won, same as always. I parted the curtain and stepped inside. The booth was small, cozy even. Barely enough room for the bench seat and a narrow counter. The bench was worn wood, smooth from use that didn't seem possible here. Above it sat a dark rectangular screen set into the wall, blank and waiting. No buttons, no slots, no obvious tech, just the screen and the seat. I hesitated, then sat down. The second my weight settled on the bench, the screen flickered to life with a soft chime. Blue-white light bloomed across it, crisp and modern, the kind of glow you'd see in an office lobby back home. Technology, actual technology. Here, in a dungeon. The screen resolved into clean white text on a dark background. "Welcome, adventurer." I stared. My heart gave a small, surprised thud. Not fear, just what? The words continued to appear, smooth and unhurried. "You are one of the fortunate few who have been selected to participate in this experiment. The path ahead will continuously challenge you. You will be given opportunities to grow, to adapt, to prove your worth within the company. Each flaw, each trial, each small victory is a step toward demonstrating your potential. Promotions await those who rise to meet them. Rest when you need to. Explore when you want to. The system is designed to reward curiosity, resilience, and understanding. Welcome aboard. Please look at the camera." Before I could even process the words, a tiny lens near the top of the screen glinted. A soft flash, bright but not blinding, lit the booth for half a second. My picture had just been taken. I blinked spots from my eyes, mouth half open. The screen cleared. Then new text appeared below a small thumbnail of my startled face. Photo recorded. Profile updated. I leaned forward. voice low but clear in the quiet booth. Wait, what? What was the criteria? How did you pick me? The screen didn't hesitate. The words flowed instantly, calm and precise, like someone had been waiting for the question. The criteria were straightforward and specific. The criteria were simple. Comfort with solitude. A life that wasn't tightly anchored elsewhere. A mind that stays awake, curious, even when the world grows quiet. An ability to adapt without resisting change. A natural sense for systems, patterns, and how things fit together. You met every parameter. The selection was not random. It was deliberate. The text paused there, steady on the screen, waiting. I sat back against the bench, the wood creaking faintly under me. The booth felt smaller now, the valley outside suddenly farther away. My picture stared back from the corner of the screen, wide-eyed, hair a little messy from the day's walk, small surprised smile still half there. Second day, and the dungeon had just explained itself. Sort of. I exhaled slowly, the air inside the booth tasting faintly of warm electronics and valley flowers drifting in through the curtain. I sat there in the narrow booth, the screen's glow casting faint blue light across my hands, the valley's soft sounds filtering in through the half-open curtain, like a distant reminder that the world outside was still gentle. The words about the criteria hung there, steady and final. Lone wolf, no attachments, trouble sleeping, quick to adapt. It felt like someone had read my life like a resume and decided it fit. Not flattering exactly, just accurate. I rubbed the back of my neck, the quartz pendant shifting cool against my skin. I leaned closer to the screen. Okay, so what happens next? What kind of challenges? How do I... The screen flickered once, almost apologetically. New text appeared in the same calm font. Response generation limit reached for today. Please try again tomorrow. Have a good day, adventurer. That was it. No elaboration, no goodbye flourish. Just those polite, clipped lines. Then the screen dimmed to black, leaving only a faint afterglow and my own reflection staring back. Wide-eyed, hair tousled from the climb down. That small, surprised smile, finally gone slack. I exhaled through my nose, a quiet huff that was half laugh, half disbelief. Seriously? The booth didn't answer. No chime, no flash, nothing. Just silence, and the faint smell of warm plastic mixed with the honey-vanilla scent drifting in from the flowers outside. I sat for another long moment, letting it sink in. I had been selected, pulled here because I fit the profile. And there was technology here. Real, responsive, AI-level stuff hidden inside a photo booth in the middle of a dungeon meadow. The giant tree outside, the runes, the sprites, the locks that opened like they knew my hands. And now this. Layers on layers. It didn't feel heavy or exciting. It just made a quiet kind of sense. I pushed up from the bench. The wood creaked softly under me. I stepped back through the curtain, letting it fall close behind me with a faint rustle. The valley greeted me the same way it had before. Grasses swaying, stream murmuring, enormous tree standing sentinel in the center, like nothing had changed. But something had. I took a slow breath of the clean, alive air, adjusted the satchel on my shoulder, and started walking. not toward anything specific yet, just forward. Tomorrow, apparently, the booth would have more to say. I stood just outside the information booth for a moment longer, the curtains settling back into place behind me with a soft sigh. The screen's final words, "Have a good day," still echoed faintly in my head, polite and absurd in equal measure. Technology in a dungeon, selection criteria, promotions. It was a lot, but not the kind of lot that demanded immediate panic. More like a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit yet, but wasn't sharp enough to cut. The valley stretched out in front of me, unchanged and unhurried. Grasses moved in slow, rolling waves. The stream kept its quiet song. Birds drifted, like they had all the time in the world. And in the center of it all, that enormous tree waited, patient, impossible, drawing the eye without ever demanding it. It felt like the only obvious direction. I adjusted the satchel strap across my shoulder, felt the light weight of coins and mushrooms shift inside, and started walking. No rush. The grass was soft under my boots, springy in a way that made each step feel cushioned. The air stayed warm and clean, carrying that faint honey vanilla from the flowers, mixed now with something deeper, earth and old wood and green growing things. Every few paces I paused, without meaning to, just to breathe it in, to let the quiet seep a little further under my skin. The tree drew closer slowly, almost gently. One moment, it was a distant shape anchoring the valley. The next, it was filling more of the sky, its golden veined trunk rising wider, steadier. The canopy overhead began to filter the diffused light into softer patterns, dappling the grass in shifting silver green. Shadows played lazy games across the ground. The stream's murmur faded to a background hum, replaced by the faint rustle of leaves far above, like distant rain that never quite fell. I kept walking, slower now, letting the distance close at its own pace. My shoulders eased. The small tension I hadn't noticed in my jaw loosened. The world felt less like a place I'd been dropped into and more like a place that was holding space for me to catch my breath. Eventually, the grass gave way to thicker roots that rose from the earth like gentle ridges, smooth and warm underfoot. I stepped over them carefully, then stopped. The tree towered. It didn't just rise. It filled everything. The trunk curved away in both directions like the curve of the earth itself. Bark dark and textured, those golden veins pulsing so faintly, I almost thought I imagined it. I tilted my head back, trying to find the top. Branches layered into branches, leaves shimmering, fading up and up until they blurred into the cavern's impossible ceiling. No end in sight, just height, endless, calm height. I let out a soft breath. I'm still in a dungeon, right? The words felt small against the tree's quiet presence, but saying them out loud made me smile. A small, real one, the kind that sneaks up without asking permission. Underground, inside a mountain. And yet here I was, standing at the foot of something that felt more like a living world than any cave should. At the base, where the widest roots met the ground, something else waited. A tent. Simple, low, canvas the color of old parchment, staked loosely into the soft earth. No glow, no runes, just fabric shifting faintly in the unfelt breeze. The flap half open like an invitation left casually. I stepped closer. The canvas was worn but clean, smelling faintly of sun-dried linen even though there was no sun. I reached out, lifted the flap, and ducked inside. The interior was dim, cozy, lit only by the soft light filtering through the fabric. In the center, on a small wooden counter that looked hand-carved from the tree's own roots, sat an old black and white television. Square screen, rounded corners, rabbit ear antenna tilted at a slight angle. No cord, no plug, just there, silent and waiting, like it had been expecting someone for a very long time. The tent flap settled behind me with a soft rustle, sealing out most of the valley's light and leaving the space dim, close, comforting. The old black and white television sat there on its little root-carved counter, like it had been waiting decades for company. No power cord, no obvious switch, just the rounded screen, the tilted rabbit ears, the faint layer of dust that caught the filtered glow coming through the canvas. I stepped closer, half expecting nothing. Then it clicked on. A low, familiar hum filled the tent, the kind old TVS made before they warmed up. The screen flickered to snowy static for a second, then cleared into crisp black and white lines. Text scrolled across it in blocky retro font, the sort you'd see on an old arcade machine or a VHS title card. Welcome, adventurer. You have arrived at Goods and Services. If you are ever in need of supplies, this is your one-stop shop for anything and everything you may need, or perhaps wish to sell. The words hung there a moment, then faded to a simple menu cursor, blinking patiently. I let out a quiet laugh, soft, genuine, the kind that bubbles up when something is too perfectly ridiculous to be anything but funny. First a photo booth with corporate AI, now a black and white TV running a dungeon store like it was straight out of an 80s infomercial. Whoever built this place had clearly leaned hard into the nostalgia. Neon dreams, synth beats that weren't playing but somehow felt relative. The whole aesthetic screaming, come for the adventure, stay for the retro vibes. It was absurd. It was kind of perfect. A small chime sounded, not from the TV, but but from somewhere inside my own head, like the system itself was clearing its throat. New skill acquired. Talking with machines. Charisma increased when negotiating goods and services. Improved rates, better deals, friendlier interactions with automated systems. The notification felt warm, like a gentle pat on the shoulder. I flexed my fingers, half expecting to feel something different. Nothing visible changed, but the air in the tent seemed a little friendlier. The TV's glow, a little less impersonal. The screen shifted without me touching anything. Icons appeared in neat rows, simple line drawings in stark black and white, like pixel art from an old game. Potions in rounded bottles, weapons with crossed hilts, tools, trinkets, even what looked like food items. A scroll prompt blinked at the bottom. Use arrow keys or gesture to browse. I didn't have arrow keys, but I raised my hand anyway, swiping lightly left to right. The icons slid smoothly, responsive as any touchscreen. No lag, no fuss. Just the quiet click of the TV's internal mechanisms and the soft rustle of canvas overhead. I scrolled past basics, health potions, small, medium, greater, mana restoratives, a few rusty daggers that looked familiar from my first day. Then something caught my eye. Leather armor set, basic reinforced. Icon, a simple cuirass with shoulder guards, crossed straps. Defense, +12. Durability, 85 out of 100. Bonuses, +3 agility, +2 stealth. Minor resistance to slashing damage. Price, 450 coins. Sellback value, 225 coins. I stared at the stats. 12 defense sounded solid. Better than the cloth tunic I'd woken up in at least. Agility and stealth bonuses felt tailor-made for someone who'd spent the day sneaking past goblins and picking locks like it was second nature. It looked sturdy in that pixelated way, practical without being flashy. I scrolled a little further, checking a few more pieces. Boots with similar bonuses, gloves that promised grip improvement, but kept circling back to the leather set. My satchel held maybe 120 coins from today's small loot. Not enough yet, but close enough to make it feel real. Attainable. The TV waited patiently, cursor blinking, ready for whatever came next. I kept scrolling through the black and white icons, the TV humming its low, steady note like an old friend left on in the background. Potions, tools, a few cloaks that looked warmer than my current tunic. Nothing urgent, but useful. Then one little square caught my eye and held it. Steak. Icon. A thick cut on a simple plate. Grill marks visible even in pixel form. Description. Freshly seared beefsteak. Restores moderate health and stamina. Highly satisfying. Price, 8 copper. 8 copper. I checked my satchel mentally. Coins from the goblins, and that small chest earlier added up to more than enough. My stomach gave a quiet, timely rumble. The valley light outside the tent had softened further. That golden, not quite evening glow, deepening towards something restful. It was getting late in the day already, or at least it felt that way. A steak sounded perfect. Juicy, warm, real food after a day of mushrooms and whatever sprite chime energy counted as. If only there were potatoes to go with it. As the thought crossed my mind, I swiped again, almost on reflex. And there they were, potatoes. Icon, 3 round tubers, unassuming and perfect. Description: versatile cooking staple. Boil, bake, mash, fry. Price: 5 copper for the set. I laughed under my breath, soft and easy, of course. The shop was listening, or at least reading the room better than most people ever had. Decision made. I tapped the air in front of the screen. Nothing happened at first. Then the TV chimed once, brighter. Text scrolled. Purchase confirmed. Steak, 8 copper. Potatoes, 5 copper. Total, 13 copper. Remaining balance updated. A small compartment at the base of the counter clicked open with a mechanical whir. Inside sat the items, warm and real. The steak wrapped in butcher paper that smelled faintly of char and herbs. The potatoes clean and earthy in a little burlap sack. I gathered them carefully, tucked them into my satchel beside the coins and mushrooms, and stepped back out of the tent. I stepped back through the tent flap, the canvas settling behind me with a quiet rustle. The valley air met me again, warm, alive, laced with honey vanilla from the wildflowers and the deep, grounding scent of the enormous tree's bark. The light had eased into that slow, golden twilight that never quite became night. Fireflies, just beginning their gentle rise in specks of pale green and lavender. My stomach gave a soft, patient nudge. Steak, potatoes, simple, perfect for tonight. The purchases were already tucked in the satchel. Light as ever, weightless thanks to its magic. The steak wrapped in butcher paper, still warm, char-scented. The 3 potatoes in their small burlap sack, clean, earthy, ready. 13 copper lighter. But the shop had felt more like a friendly conversation than a transaction. Talking with machines, skill humming quietly in the background, making the whole thing smoother than it had any right to be. I walked a short distance from the tree's sprawling roots, private but not isolated. The tree's vast presence still close enough to feel protective. The grass cushioned each step, springy and soft. I reached into the satchel for the tiny house key, brass, vine-etched, cool against my fingers. It had been there since the first morning, clipped inside like it knew its place. I held it up, twisted it slowly in the air. Soft click. Golden light rippled outward from the tip, warm waves spreading across the grass. The air shimmered, folded gently. The cottage unfolded. Moss-kissed stone foundation. Warm timber walls rising smooth and honey brown. Thatched roof settling with the faint scent of summer fields. Single chimney trailing a thin thread of wood smoke. Small porch, rocking chair. Windows already glowing lantern soft from within. The door eased open, releasing cedar, a whisper of fresh bread, and the low crackle of a waiting hearth. I stepped onto the porch, slipped off my boots, lined them neatly by the door. Bare feet met warm wooden floorboards inside. The cottage wrapped around me like a slow exhale. Low-beamed ceiling, small hearth where flames danced steady and smokeless, brightening just a touch as I entered. Narrow table with 2 chairs, single bed under its quilt. Shelves with jars, kettle, spoon. Simple enough. I set the butcher paper and burlap sack on the table. The steak smelled rich already, the potatoes earthy and promising. Thought, pan, low heat, spatula, maybe some herbs. The satchel gave its familiar faint hum. When I looked, the cast iron pan had appeared on the hearth hook, or perhaps it had been waiting all along, wooden spatula beside it, and a small dish of fresh rosemary and thyme, leaves still dewy, as if picked moments ago. I took the pan down, set it over the fire. The flames rose obligingly, gentle and even. The steak went in. It sizzled softly, filling the room with savory warmth. I quartered 2 potatoes, nestled them around the meat to roast in the edges. The third I wrapped in a cloth for tomorrow. Scents wove slow and comforting. Char, earth, herbs, wood smoke. The lantern swayed overhead, casting honey shadows that danced lazy across the walls. I leaned against the table, watching the food brown, the day's quiet layers settling into peace. Second day. Photobooth that knew my secrets. TV shop with retro charm and a new skill. Tree bigger than cities. Satchel that listened. Cottage that came when called. A small, real smile crept up again. The steak was ready, juicy, edges crisp. Potatoes golden, soft inside. I plated it on a simple wooden dish that felt right in my hand, carried it to the porch step, sat with my back against the door frame. Outside, the valley breathed easy, enormous tree towering into soft darkness, stream murmuring lullaby, fireflies weaving slow patterns. Inside the open door, the hearth popped once, content. For tonight, that was everything.